Good morning and welcome to Oxford, which today and for the rest of this week will be full of people talking about farming and food, including announcements from the government on the future of England's largest environmental scheme. We'll have more on that later. There are two agricultural conferences in the city this week, the Oxford Farming Conference in its 90th year and the Oxford Real Farming Conference in its 17th. We will be reporting from both events, but we're going to start today at the Oxford Farming Conference, the OFC. Its theme this year is Growing Resilience. And as we'll hear later, in a report commissioned for this event, they call for urgent action to move UK farming from survival mode to an industry capable of surviving in what they call an increasingly complex, brittle and volatile world. Well, one of the sessions here is called Inspiring Innovators, so they might be able to help. Starting with Helen Wyman from Toucan Mentoring.
I've created a mentoring network off the back of my Nuffield Farming Scholarship I did in 22, and the aim is to connect people across the sector, but connect them in a structured and a professional way that allows everybody to have access to high quality mentoring, which moves people, as you said, from that survival mode into actually thriving and moving forwards.
So it's not just coming to a conference and chatting over coffee?
No, definitely not. So we run a in-person training day, and then we do 6 months online mentoring after that. And then I've built a piece of software which matches people. It matches you on your personality types, on the way you like to learn, and all these different kinds of things. So I don't mind whether you're a dairy farmer or you're in the hazelnut industry or whatever industry, you share the same issues, you say the same problems and things you'd like to talk about.
Thomas from Copperfield Enterprises, you are looking at hazelnuts. Why?
Yeah, I think the reason is farming has changed probably more in the last 5 years than it has in the last 70 years. And our aims have gone from just producing food to improving water, putting carbon in the ground, and also improving biodiversity. So I just started looking for a new crop that was high value with a low labour requirement that would yield in a changing climate, and I think this is the one.
What stage are you at with actually making that happen?
So I planted about 3,000 trees about 4 years ago. I can now tell you everything that you should not do when trying to plant hazelnuts. And I've also been doing enough field travelling the world to find best practice in all the different countries, and it's been fascinating.
Forgive my ignorance about hazelnuts. How long from planting it to making money out of it?
5 to 7 years. Yeah, It's not a short-term thing, but farming is not a short-term thing either.
It's been a tricky time for farming. How would you describe what people are feeling at the minute, Helen?
I think there's a lot of sadness in the industry, but I think when you go and talk to certain individuals, there is positivity, because there is opportunities, but sometimes they're really hard to see when it's dark, it's cold, and you're on your farm and you don't speak to anybody. So, which is, if it's all right to link back to what we do, that's why we do what we do, because it's not everybody's cup of tea to come to Oxford. It's not everyone's cup of tea to go to a networking event, because most people, do you know what I mean, scares the living daylights out of them. So ours is a low barrier to entry way to create new connections, which you create new connections, you talk to somebody, then hopefully it helps you see a way forward.
Thomas McVeigh and Helen Wyman there. Well, earlier I mentioned the conference report. It's called UK Agriculture, Grasping the Opportunities. Well, its author, Dr. Louise Manning, is with me. And one of the things you talk about, Louise, is banny. It's a banny world. What does that mean?
We have had over the probably before 2008 a world where things seemed to trickle along exactly the same. They weren't that complicated. If you were thinking about both farming and wider with the government, everything seemed to be the same till we hit the global crisis in 2008. But what we're seeing increasingly, if we look at the Ukraine-Russian conflict, we look at all the other conflicts that seem to be sparking. If you look at COVID, for example, and its impact, we're seeing a much more brittle, anxious, non-linear and incomprehensible world. So what does that mean for farmers? That means if I am trying to develop my 9-year rotation, because I'm now going to put ryegrass in my arable, what's the world going to look like in 9 years' time? And where previously you could have had some certainty, right now the challenge is there is no certainty.
You talk about farming being in survival mode. What does that look like for a farming business?
If we look at the profitability, we can see that profitability is low on farms, even stagnant. And I'm talking about the farming business now, not developing diversifications to prop up farming businesses. But the real metric, which is in the report, is return on capital employed. And if you look at the finance sector, they'd be expecting about 15% return on capital employed every year. Slightly less in manufacturing, about 8%. What's it been in farming over the last 10 years? 0.5 to minus 0.8%. Now that says that we are in survival mode, because if you're not making profit, if you are not creating capital in your business, how do you invest for the future? And how do young people coming into that business that look at that balance sheet, how are they going to believe there is a future?
Well, this is where people start talking about it's a way of life. Because you can have a nice life even if you're not making actually that much money, they will argue, if you're in farming. And that, some will say, is why farming has just puttered along. Because it's a family business, it's not ambitious enough, it doesn't, frankly, try hard enough.
So what the report asks farming businesses, indeed all businesses in the agri-food sector, think about is 4 questions. What am I trying to achieve? And if what I'm trying to achieve is a lifestyle, and as long as you can maintain that lifestyle, as long as you can identify which enterprises in your farm aren't giving any contribution, are actually a hobby, as long as you can survive in that respect and the bank is happy for you to continue, bearing in mind we're now in England anyway, in an unsupported world, then that's your choice of what you're trying to achieve. But for many other businesses, what they're trying to achieve going forward is very different.
You farm at home in Herefordshire with livestock. Why do you do it?
We do it to make a profit, first and foremost. If we are going to improve our farm in terms of nature, we have to have finance to be able to do that. We do it because we love where we live, we love farming, but the emotional side of it has to come second. Over the 35 years, nearly 36 years I've been married to my husband, we've had to change that farm many times. There are certain enterprises which emotionally we've been connected to. My father-in-law had hops, for example. We had to take those out of the business. So everything I've put in the report, we've been considering ourselves or have done ourselves in our own business. So whilst elements of it are academic, because that's the nature of reports, there is a real focus on the practical aspects of what farmers will need to do. And it's not easy, but business as usual is not an option.
Dr. Louise Manning there. Well, a little later today, the Environment Secretary, Emma Reynolds, will be exactly where I am now, here in the main hall at the Oxford Farming Conference. She is giving a speech and she is going to announce an update on the Sustainable Farming Incentive. This, as you may remember, is England's biggest environmental scheme. It pays farmers to farm in a more environmentally friendly way. And it was closed back in March last year to new applications because it had run out of money. Well, apparently now it is going to reopen and there are going to be 2 application windows this year. The first will be in June and it will prioritise smaller farms and those without an existing agreement. Then there'll be a second round in September for everybody else. She's also going to announce some more funding for the Farming in Protected Landscape scheme, the FIPL, and money to help farmers work more in collaboration. With me to discuss this are Ali Capper, who farms in Herefordshire, fruit and hops, and also Andrew Pitts, who farms in Northamptonshire. Now, Andrew, you have a fairly big farm, it's around 2,000 acres, and you are already in the Sustainable Farming Incentive. So what does this mean for you?
We've been environmentally farming through SFI, but more previous to that, HLS and stewardship beforehand. So we've got areas that have been out of agricultural production and environmental production for 22, 25 years. Tremendous. That long-term commitment means that we have an absolutely stunning amount of wildlife on our farm. Lots of red-leafed birds, lots of rare insects. If that commitment isn't going to be there for all size farms, and we're in an SFI agreement which expires the end of March 27. If we're not able to get that funding, we can no longer, with the margins in farming as they are now, we cannot subsidise that environmental production. So unless I can find a market for some private money, we're going to lose that environmental benefit, and that's tragic.
And you think you might lose out because what she's saying is that smaller farms and farms that aren't already in the system can apply in June, and then there'll be a second round of applications for September. What makes you think there won't be any money left in September?
Because the way in which anybody, unless they separate those two funds, anyone who isn't in SFI will be bang on that the moment it's announced. So probably the website will crash, because that's what normally happens, and then everybody will get in. So unless the money is separate, two separate pots, do you honestly think there'll be anything left for us? We'll have to fend for ourselves, but that's fine as long as we know about it and we can plan for it.
Well, you do know about it now, and you can plan for it, and surely you're a big farm, really, and you might be able to club together with some other bigger farms and find some private money.
The lag in private funding to replace public hasn't yet come through, so there's a gap. We always knew there would be a gap in funding at some point, but this could be quite frightening. So I came here to Oxford, as I have done for years, seeking inspiration, and this does not inspire me at all. This is an even bigger challenge to my business than I was expecting.
Ali, what will this mean on your farm? Are you in SFI at the minute?
So we are, but only because of COVID. We had to take hops out of production because the pubs closed for 10 months and that ground was fallow. So if you can imagine a hop yard with wild bird seed in it, we've got a bit of that on the farm. We missed out last March. We were going to put more in. So the first part of this announcement we may actually benefit from, although the hop market is very quietly starting to come back. So our decision will be, do we plant a commercial crop which we can trade in the market, or do we have faith that this scheme will endure? And I think from what I've understood of the announcement, the bit that is missing for me is the longevity. The longevity is what is required for farmers to plan. And although I haven't had long to think about this, I think I've got more faith in being able to sell hops to a beer market, albeit a market that's in decline because we're drinking less alcohol, than I have in environmental schemes, which I'm not sure have a future in terms of them being publicly funded.
Ali makes a really valid point about the longevity of these schemes. If you want to do a really good job environmentally, it takes time. Nature will recover to fill the vacuum if you haven't got much in the way of environmental management on your farm. What's the point of building it up only to take away, at the end of that scheme, their habitat? So the populations will crash again.
Obviously, we haven't heard this speech yet, but the Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs have released little bits of it, one of which the Environment Secretary, Emma Reynolds, will apparently say, you will have the certainty you need to plan clear budgets, clear timelines, clear future roadmap, and growth built on strong foundations.
So the devil is always in the detail, and I will reserve judgment on that until we see the detail. Economic growth for a business, in really simple terms, is we need to be able to sell more. And if we're going to make the investment needed to sell more, we need business confidence, because this is our money. It's my future generations that I'm putting at risk if I borrow money to invest and it's a poor investment decision. So that business certainty and that longevity is crucial.
Well, later today we will hear what Emma Reynolds has to say and we will reflect that on tomorrow's programme. But that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Beatrice Fenton, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.